Picture this. As a Magic player, to start your day, you decided to go on the happiest place on the internet, Twitter. And you're scrolling through trying to find the latest cosplayer, the latest deck tech, heck, the latest Fire Shoes tag. And you come across an age-old post that Magic the Gathering is dead. You read through, you're kind of bewildered by the reasoning, whether it be due to the recent EDH bans and people's loss of confidence in the value of their collection and Wizards of the Coast's ability to uphold that, or maybe their stance on not banning anything in the constructed formats that they love so much, Modern and Pioneer, so that they don't affect their concurrent RCQ seasons. Whatever it might be, those two reasons have a lot of recency bias to them, but we've seen over the years of Magic the Gathering that many reasons have come up for players to lose confidence in the game, whether that be due to pricing, due to competitive integrity, or just some nonsensical reason altogether. It can be very important to look back at some of these situations and look at how they mirror a lot of things going on today in Magic, and kind of go over with that 2020 hindsight lens that we have, how important or how silly some of these situations really are. And I wanted to take a look at one of those today, looking at Goyf Gate, a situation where a Modern Masters 2015 limited environment was brought to the forefront thanks to one of Magic's most recognizable creatures out there, Tarmogoyf, and its foil version, a card that in Modern at some point had a price tag of over $200 and its foil fetched for way more than that. And how a decision to draft a Tarmogoyf over what was seen to be correct at the time based on that player's draft archetype, and what that meant for competitive integrity in the game. And now competitive integrity is just almost lost its meaning at this point. Commander is one of the front-facing formats, if not the most popular format in Magic the Gathering, and so the gathering and the magic of the moment is so much more important. And I think that's what this situation highlighted. It was the exemplification of what we know now, but back then. Goyf Gate was ahead of its time, if you will, and how a decision to make personal gains towards your enjoyment of Magic the Gathering was so important, and how a lot of people didn't see that at the time, and how it created such a silly situation to the point where we're probably in a much better place and we don't know it. But I'm kind of bearing the lead here. Let's hop right into it with maybe just a straight clip of the situation itself. What you're seeing on screen right now is Pascal Maynard taking a look at his draft deck, taking a look through the cards that he's brought up from Modern Horizons 2015. And there's a bunch of different draft archetypes out there. If you take a look at the colors that he's looking at, there is a red-green domain deck, there is a red-white Voltron strategy. There's a couple of different things that he could be going for, but it's pretty red dominant from what you're seeing. So generally speaking, you're probably looking for maybe another colorless effect, a white card, or probably another red support piece to maybe round out this set and this draft that he's going for. So now at this point, we can see that Pascal's opening up a fresh pack. This pack was not handed to him. So as he takes a look through and makes sure the appropriate amount of cards are in that pack, putting the rare to the front, he then flips it over and finds the foil Tarmogoyf, a card that is valued at this point $400 to $500, a huge value proposition. Now, at this point, I just want to zoom out and talk about how competitive Magic then and now is a very expensive proposition. Traveling to these events, gas, the cost of kind of hotels, and just stay in general, the logistics of being a quote unquote professional Magic player is very expensive. And it was so back then, even with the programs in place to fly players out, give them buys and everything. This is a system that Wizards of the Coast has kind of abandoned because it's very costly for them to maintain. And I mean, rightfully so. So a lot of these players had cost in the back of their mind. If they were able to find value in their events through these drafts or through winning maybe side events or other big things, they would take that value. It is just smart to do so, because ultimately speaking, especially at that time, you can't just play games for the love of the game. Not a lot of people have that, I guess, situation brought in front of them. Not a lot of people can afford to do that on a daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it might be basis. Heck, even now with the price of everything. And so it's important to understand the value of this, which is why I want to highlight it. $400 to $500 is not an amount of money that you should shove aside. That could be the value of a hotel, the value of some of your gas, some of your lodging. And so taking this as a value pick, actually made a lot of sense. But when you go back into the video and you take a look at what Pascal's doing here, kind of looking at the front and back of the card, if you take a look at the rest of the pack, there is also the correct decision here. Burst Lightning. Now, Burst Lightning is a very interesting card. A card that actually is now on the list as a promo full art version right now. It's kind of funny to think that a card with kicker that actually has a fairly decent amount of text to it, for 2 instant speed, it does 2 damage. It's a shock. Okay, let's be honest here. It's a shock variant, but it's one with kicker. The age-old joke of how everything is kicker is kind of one for here. Now, Burst Lightning has a kicker of 4. That's a pretty big cost for something that is just a shock variant at the end of the day. And the shock variant, I mean, creature or player, you know, at this time, it doesn't hit planeswalkers, and I mean, later on, it would be errata to do so. But then you pay 4 to deal 4 damage to anything. Folks, that is 5 mana to deal 4 damage to any target. Now, this is a draft card if I've ever seen one. This is, you know, no competitive just play whatsoever outside of this limited environment. Heck, even now, if you take a look at the Pauper format where this is a common, nowhere would you see a card like this in a format where Lightning Bolt is available to you. Burst Lightning, by all purposes, is not playable outside of this draft environment. It's not a good card. It is good in Pascal's deck, but Tarmogoyf also is not a good card. Burst Lightning is the pick here, but Tarmogoyf is a value proposition. Tarmogoyf puts you up on this draft. Tarmogoyf potentially gets you back on the money that you had to travel to this event, to be able to play more competitive events, more GPs, more tournaments in Magic the Gathering, extending your life as a pro player. So do you make the pick to choose the Burst Lightning that increases incrementally the value and the win proposition of your deck, or do you pick the value choice of the foil Tarmogoyf? Do you pass on a $400 to $500 lottery ticket? Is winning this game by a 1 to 2% more by picking the Burst Lightning worth those $400 or $500? Ultimately, so if we go back to the clip, we can see that Pascal picks the Tarmogoyf. And that's where the controversy starts. Because again, it was correct to pick the Burst Lightning. If you take a look at Pascal's draft kind of deck here as it's developing, it was the correct move at hand. And so a lot of people got upset by this. And I guess you could say rightfully so. If competitive integrity was so important at the time, again, at a time where Commander may not have been front-facing, Commander was made at the time, it's 2015, we have had the Commander precons at the time, and the idea of the gathering multiplayer and the casual aspects of the game was evolving as well. Heck, at this point, I was 2 years into my personal Magic career. It's very important to note that still, constructed Magic was the front-facing just marketing strategy of Magic. It was standard, it was limited, heck, a little bit of modern as well. It was all there. I mean, Modern Masters is the draft environment. Of course, modern was there. But why was the outrage so important to people? Why was it that picking Burst Lightning brought outrage to so many people? Heck, so many competitive players out there. I'm not going to be here to point people out because a lot of them have actually apologized for the sake of optics around this situation, because really what it was bullying. A lot of people were upset that Pascal let the competitive integrity of Magic go to choose something that was the value pick. And a lot of people were upset by this because they had their own views of what it meant to be a competitive player, what it meant to be a player to uphold the values of what they thought Magic was at the time, to travel around, go to tournaments, go international, be eventually a Magic World player and join the Magic the Gathering Hall of Fame. All of this was different at the time. And I think your values as a Magic player are probably pretty different as well. Let me know what you believe in the comment section down below it means to be a Magic player at this time. Is it to be a Commander player? Is it to be a Constructed player? Is it to be both? Is it to be a GP grinder? What does it mean to you in comparison to that? Especially when it comes to naming this, because the controversy around the bullying for Pascal and the choice for this was so big that they called it Goyf Gate. Now, Gate refers to a political controversy so many years ago, almost 50 years ago at this point, around something called Watergate. Now, I'm not going to get into that whole situation. Really what it was, the Gate kind of suffix here was taken from that and applied to this. Again, as a more humorous angle to say that this is our political controversy. This is our big thing that you can take a look back at. but it really wasn't anything that similar. But it felt so when it came to the online discourse around this, the Facebook posts, the Twitter posts, and all the bullying that pro players had toward Pascal, to the point where he actually put out a statement, a big kind of Facebook post where he posted a long-winded response kind of addressing certain players. And there are certain excerpts that I want to take from. At one point he says, "I assume what they meant to say was that I'm disgracing the professional community because I valued money over percentages of winning more games, which is easily translated to pro players don't play Magic for money." I mean, look, at the end of the day, as he mentioned, some play to prove that they're still among the best, even with a full-time job. Some play for fame, some play because it's a great, mind-challenging game, and honestly, some play as a lifestyle. They want money, but mostly to maintain the ability to travel, eat, pay rent, and not have to work a regular job that would affect their availability to play the game. At the end, he even says, "Do I regret it? From the point of view that my goal is to always find the right play in any given situation, yes." Which again, addressing the fact that choosing Burst Lightning based on his current draft deck was correct. Burst Lightning was the removal spell. Had a little bit of variability. It could do a bit more later in the game. Options are great and limited, but for the story and entertainment it created, he would do it again. And I think that's what resonates with a lot of people here from this response. I think it is, in my opinion, correct to pick the Goyf, especially now looking back at it. The game is about its big moments. It's about the magic. It's about the gathering. It's about the literal name that the game wants to promote. The whole wish-wash idea of what it was in terms of integrity or whatnot. There are no hard and fast rules of what you had to pick, what you could and couldn't. You could make the value choice. And I think a lot of casual players did at the time. Limited was maybe a lot more popular at the time, and a lot of people would value draft rares and certain uncommons that they were looking for to build up to their standard deck or their modern deck. A lot of people made that choice. And for some reason, the dichotomy between being a casual player and a pro player was really exemplified here, because there are a lot more casual players now in Magic the Gathering. There are a lot more players in general. And I think for that casual player, the Cinderella story aspect of it is really important too. Maybe going to a GP, anyone can join a GP at the time and come all the way to the top 8, show it off, be proud of it, have that great picture of you in the top 8, have a great little pose, show off your card, and you are now in the annals of history of Magic. But for some reason, that dream is different for the pro player because they're supposed to quote unquote represent something different. But they're just humans at the end of the day as well. As Pascal pointed out, a lot of people have different reasons for engaging in the game of Magic the Gathering. He's in the latter. The truth is that I thought taking the foil Tarmogoyf was worth more than the percentage I get from having one Burst Lightning in my deck. I didn't do it for the actual money. I did it because I thought this X amount of money could possibly mean going to more Grand Prix. And so he made a choice that I was highlighting for a while here. He made the choice that allowed him to potentially make more games of Magic happen for him, make more competitive Magic happen for him. A choice that I think a lot of us would make at this time, especially with the rising cost of Magic and the growing idea of buying singles and supporting your LGS where you can. Making every single choice you do in Magic the Gathering these days, whether it's to proxy, not to proxy, buy the foil or buy the alt art, all of these have value. They have a significant impact on our personal lives in terms of the financials of it. And it's very important to see that sometimes it's okay. Heck, not even sometimes, a lot of the times, in my opinion, it's okay to make that decision that betters your own situation, to get that super, $80 to $100 to $500 rare that you pulled in your draft, to maybe be able to trade into more packs, more cards, more situations where you can engage in the gathering, the whole magic of it all, the moment and the big crazy situations that lead to the memorable talking pieces that you have further down the line with your friends, family, LGS workers, whoever it might be. It's important to see that Goyf Gate at the time was again ahead of its time. It was a situation that exemplified the magic and the gathering of the situation, the casual's dream, the Cinderella story that so many of us chase after, and how the random bullying and vitriol that came out of it really didn't make much sense whatsoever. Even for the pro players that, kind of spouted a lot of this, and Pascal addressed it, it was very weird for them as well, because if you look at a lot of their stories, they weren't necessarily the most privileged either. They had to pay their way through a lot of these events. They had to grind a lot. And so they had a lot of shared resources that they were able to pull together and maybe get there. And so not every pro player, shares that vision with them. A lot of them might be in worse situations, chasing a dream that is a lot harder for them to achieve. Whether or not Pascal was in there is a whole different discussion, but ultimately, it's important to see that sometimes the things that we yell about on the internet, especially when it comes to Magic discourse, further down the line, really think about it. Is it that important? What is it attacking here? What are you upset about? What is it really affecting you personally, in the community, and to the people around you? And maybe that's how we can then look at some of these situations that affect us now, compare it to something like Goyf Gate, and really see if, I think it comes in the name, right? Like calling it Gate, a comparison to a political situation that really rocked the kind of the political landscape of the United States of America, comparing that to a simple foil pick in a draft environment of Modern Horizons 2015 seems kind of silly, right? And that's how I'd like for many of you to take a look at some of the situations we have now with, the EDH ban announcements, the whole modern and constructed ban situations around the RCQ seasons, the banning of Grief, and way back when with the banning of Inverter around Pioneer, like all of these situations that so many people get upset with and kind of have so much personal stake in. And we see so much online discourse about, what does it ultimately mean to you? Why are you upset? Really break it down and analyze it. And is it worth bullying people over? Is it worth spouting that vitriol? Is it worth chasing people down and threatening their lives over? Honestly, 99.9% of the time, probably not. Heck, probably 100% of the time, honestly, is probably not. I just don't want to be 100% sure because someone in my comments is going to come at me with some type of reasoning that I can't argue for. Look, never say never, but it's probably not worth it. Ultimately, in this situation, I will say because of this vitriol, Pascal Maynard did ultimately look to kind of auction off the Goyf Gate, and I believe the ultimate auction was actually canceled because of like fake bids and all that stuff on eBay, and was ultimately sold after getting to almost $15,000 in terms of value. I mean, the card was worth 500, but because of various upbids and all that stuff, it almost reached a value of $15,000. And because of that, the fake bids and all, it was taken off and later sold in private auction and ultimately provided to charity, which is great. That was a fantastic cause. A good portion of it was provided to charity, and Pascal was able to keep a certain portion as well. So I think a very good outcome ultimately did come out of this. A lot of people were affected positively, and I think a lot more people were affected positively than negative out of this situation, which is a great thing to come out of this. And I think in many ways it highlighted a thing about the casual aspect of Magic the Gathering, the draft dream, pulling that rare and maybe even ultimately winning it, the competitive dream, being up there on coverage and seeing stuff like this happen. It's a very exciting moment that a lot of casual players can point back to, a lot of forum posts, Twitter discussion. When Magic the Gathering is being discussed, a lot of people can say, heck, even bad press is good press, right? You get more eyes on the game and more people talking about it, looking at limited, buying packs and all that stuff. It led to a net positive experience after the fact. But Goyf Gate is one that I think is of many situations where many people say that Magic the Gathering, quote unquote, is dead. And they look back at the situation many years later and see that honestly, nothing has changed. The game is still where we know and love it to be, albeit maybe through a different lens, through a different format, through a different line of play, through different alt arts and foils, whatever it might be. You view Magic differently than you did back then. And I think a lot of these players that have had these moments interacting with this specific situation feel differently now than they did back then. A lot of people grow, and that's okay too. But looking back into it and comparing it to the situations we have now in Magic is also very important as well. We have to be able to learn and grow from these situations and take a look at them as they come now and compare them so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. It's okay to have fun in Magic. It's about the gathering at the end of the day. But sometimes you gotta pick the Tarmogoyf as well.